Let's get straight back to that GB News exclusive, which is that as many as 6 Tory candidates, including one who was an MP in the last Parliament, are on the verge of sensationally defecting to Reform UK ahead of Friday's deadline. Now, this comes ahead of the first televised debate of this year's general election campaign this evening, which could be Rishi Sunak's last chance to improve his party's flailing poll numbers. Let's get straight into this now with GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, who broke this story this afternoon. Chris, the last thing Rishi Sunak wants to hear ahead of a huge event like tonight is a defection, a revolt in his ranks. Tell us more.
Well, that's right, Martin, and good evening. That's right. Well, I've been talking to people who are concerned about Nigel Farage becoming leader of Reform UK, standing in a seat at this general election campaign. Suddenly he's back front and centre to torment, and often torment, the Tory party. I know of at least one former MP in the last Parliament who's looking at defecting to Reform UK as soon as this week, by Friday, 4 p.m, when nominations must go in. A further 5 are thinking about it. If that were to happen, it would be a further blow to Rishi Sunak. He's already reeling from these very difficult polling figures, these mega polls. MRP polling has left him facing what looks like, all three agree, is going to be a 3-figure majority for the Labour Party on the July 4th election 1 month ago today. I think it's a worry for him, but little more they can do. He felt he probably had dealt with Nigel Farage, the threat, because when he called that election just barely 2 weeks ago, Farage immediately said, "I can't fight it, I'm not ready for it." Well, he's had his mind turned by meeting people in the Ship Inn in Wandsworth, for example. He told me yesterday on the weekend. Elsewhere around the country, they're saying, "Why aren't you standing? Why are you leaving us alone?" So he's now standing, and that means other Tory MPs are worried. They're looking at these former Tory MPs. Some candidates are saying, "Why on earth? What can you do about this, Rishi Sunak? It's an issue, a problem you've caused." Further complication since I last spoke to you at 3 o'clock, Martin. I've been texted by somebody who is talking to some of these rebels, and they make the point: why do they have to declare who they're going to stand for by 4 p.m. Friday when nominations close? Wouldn't it discombobulate the Tory party if they join the Reform Party after that date? And that would be too late to allow the Tory party to replace them with another candidate. It gets more and more complicated and more murky, but this is the business end of a general election campaign.
Chris, can I ask you about the milkshaking of Nigel Farage this afternoon? A woman, 25-year-old, has been arrested. Not the first time, of course, this happened to Nigel Farage. And in 2019, of course, during that EU election when he was milkshaked, Chris, you were there for that moment, weren't you? You were part of that campaign. You were reporting on it. Tell us, Nigel was pretty shook up by it, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. I was reminding myself, I've been around political journalism for quite a while. I was the only reporter for the Telegraph at the time on Nigel Farage's battle bus, the Brexit Party bus, Martin. I believe you were a candidate at the time in May 2019 at those EU elections. He had some Five Guys milkshake from the Cafe Five Guys thrown over him in Newcastle in Throckley, and he was immediately whisked onto the bottom of his big battle bus, saying a version of which you're seeing on the election trail today. He was really shaken. I mean, it might seem amusing to people on Twitter, social media. Come on, Nigel, it's only a milkshake or a pint of beer. But when you're Nigel Farage, you don't know what it is. It could be anything thrown over you. And I would ask, people, viewers, critics of Farage, to think about what it's like to have that happen, and you don't know what it is. And he is a target for people. And that's why I think you've seen across-the-board condemnation from James Cleverly to Yvette Cooper to Tory candidates, Labour candidates. They're all concerned. They know it could happen to them. It's not funny, and I think people should take it that seriously. Of course, we do know that the police in Essex are now taking it seriously and are holding someone at this time. But I think it is when I was with him, you kind of think, well, it's only milkshake, Nigel. Come on, get over it. Well, it wasn't. It could be anything, and it's a shock of what it could be, I think, which is so a wake-up call, I think, for these candidates. I do hope it doesn't chill down this campaign. I think Farage deserves some credit. He's the first time I've seen any party leader be amongst ordinary people in an uncontrolled environment. So far we've seen Keir Starmer, we've seen Rishi Sunak be amongst workers with bosses wearing their work bibs, or they're amongst party volunteers in a controlled environment. So the credit to Farage is this, that he's out there amongst ordinary people, going to a pub, trying to meet the voters, right? And that deserves some credit.
Chris Hope, wise words, well spoken. Thank you very much. And of course, we're all eyes now on those TV debates later on. Thank you very much for joining us. And let's get back to the studio now, where I'm joined by the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larson. Matthew, thank you for hot-footing it in.
Always good to be with you, Martin.
And yourself, Captain. Now, I spoke to Jonathan Ashworth earlier, just before you came, and he joined
My
in.
former flatmate.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, he joined in the condemnation of that Nigel Farage milkshake attack. He said, putting politics to one side, it has no place in politics.
Absolutely. I think Chris hit the nail on the head. As somebody who spent, most of the 2015 campaign pretty much every day on the road and months before that, you just don't know what's going to happen. And, absolutely, Nigel's a pretty robust figure, as we know, but you just don't know what it could be. It could be an acid attack. It could be something else. And, OK, it turns out it's a milkshake and somebody was just sort of thought there was a laugh. And it seems in this case, it wasn't even, she's saying it's not even particularly political. She didn't even go especially to hear Nigel. She just saw him and thought, flip it, I'll throw this at him. But, I think it's a really horrible thing. And in fact, there's been a report today which actually looked at candidates' experience in the local elections, which found that a huge number of candidates had been harassed. And this is people who are campaigning on a very local level. So, nothing like the profile of Nigel Farage. We can't have hate coming into our politics.
Too right. We can all concur on that. Now, let's look ahead to the big showdown tonight.
Absolutely.
The leaders debate. We had Alistair Stewart on the show earlier. Delighted to have him. He chaired, of course, the first one. I held him partly responsible for Cleggmania.
Yes, no.
Joking aside, it seems to be Rishi Sunak is the one who's itching for the fight here. He wanted 6 of these things to happen. He's expected to take a front foot. What do you think is going to happen tonight?
So I think that Rishi will be the livelier character, because Rishi is like a little terrier in these debates. But I think that Keir needs to use this as an opportunity to sell himself to the country. The public know Rishi better because he's the Prime Minister. They see him on the telly more often doing his prime ministerial thing, even though he hasn't been in office that long. Whereas Keir is not known so much as a person as Rishi is. So this is Keir's big opportunity. What I think Rishi needs to do is take a chill pill. Because do you remember in the leadership debates against Liz Truss, where he got so excited, he kept sort of speaking over her and got really aggressive, and I think that really damaged him. And maybe that's what was responsible for giving us Liz Truss as Prime Minister, because it certainly didn't do him any favours, but even with Tory members. So you have to remember, it's not a sixth-form debating society. It's about talking direct down the camera to the people at home.
As a Labour man yourself, you must concur Sir Keir Starmer's personality hasn't come through, if it exists. People are calling him Mr Magnolia, but is that actually part of his strategy? It's his to lose. All he wants to do is stay safe, not put a foot wrong, get through unscathed, and in that context, Matthew, might we expect to see a bit of a boring debate?
I hope not. I think that would be the wrong tactics to have given Keir. I think if Rishi needs to take a chill pill, then Keir needs to take the opposite. He needs to take a bit of a pep pill, because he needs to be at his liveliest. He can be. Sometimes, obviously, he gets nervous. He falls into loyally territory as a barrister for so long. You fall into that kind of loyally way of operating. But we need to see a bit of fire tonight. But what he shouldn't do is try and be what he's not. So he won't try and be Obama. He won't try and be Boris Johnson. He'll try and be himself, but perhaps himself at the less cautious end of his modus operandi. We need to see a little bit of sparkle, even, and a little bit of fight when he really cares passionately. But what you've got to remember, the key thing in all these debates is the clip is king. It's so easy to get carried away thinking it's like a school debate. It's all about, how it goes down in the hall. The ratings will be right down this year compared to previous years because they're not that big of characters, and also TV ratings go down. But millions will be watching in TV bulletins and, of course, on social media. So clip is king.
Can I quickly get your response to how you think Rishi Sunak might be feeling about this bombshell news of potentially 6 Tory candidates defecting to the Reform Party? Friday's a deadline. This is the last thing a political leader wants on their mind.
Absolutely, and especially wants on their mind when they're preparing for the debate. We've actually not seen them disappear, but when it was the 2010 debate, they disappeared for days. Peter Mandelson went and commandeered the battle bus and went and danced with some pensioners in Blackpool Tower. They were the best pictures of the 2010 campaign. And the last thing you want when you're kind of zoning in, you're doing your last prep, is to have even the threat of this, because the story is, if you're the Tories, it's all about the fact that you may slip into third place, and that's when the wheels start to to come off your campaign. So it's literally the last thing they wanted. And as Chris says, it could even carry on, because if anybody defects before Friday, nominations close, they could even say that they're not a Tory afterwards. So the nightmare continues for Rishi.
Superb stuff. Matthew Loza, as ever, thanks for joining us in the studio.